Jean Baudrillard saw it coming with terrifying clarity. The French philosopher mapped our journey from reality to simulation through 4 stages: reflection of reality, masking of reality, absence of reality, and finally, pure simulacrum, copies without originals. Cinema, he argued, was central to this progression, but even Baudrillard might be stunned by how completely his prophecy has manifested. We're not just watching simulations anymore, we're living in them. His 1981 work, Simulacra and Simulation, reads now like a transmission from a time traveller who glimpsed our present and tried to warn his past. Baudrillard understood that the progression from reality to simulation wasn't a future possibility but an ongoing process. One that would accelerate until simulation became more real than real, hyperreal. He saw Disneyland not as an escape from reality but as a concentration of it, a place that exists to convince us that the rest of America is real, when in fact the rest of America has become Disneyland. This wasn't pessimism, but diagnosis. Baudrillard traced how signs evolved from reflecting reality to having no relationship to any reality whatsoever. A photograph once proved something happened. Then photographs could be staged. Then they could be manipulated. Now they can be generated from nothing. AI creating photographs of events that never occurred, people who never existed. The progression seems technological, but Baudrillard understood it as ontological, a fundamental shift in the nature of being itself. Black Mirror serves as our dark oracle, each episode a warning about the next layer of simulation. But here's the twisted irony. By watching these warnings, we normalize them. The show doesn't prevent the futures it depicts, it acclimates us to them. We see social credit scores in Nosedive, then barely flinch when China implements them. We watch Be Right Back resurrect the dead through AI, then download apps that animate deceased relatives. Baudrillard would recognize this as simulation's final victory. We mistake the map for the territory, then forget there ever was a territory. Charlie Brooker, Black Mirror's creator, operates as a prophet of simulation, but prophecy in the age of simulation works differently. Traditional prophets warned of futures that might be avoided. Simulation prophets like Brooker create futures by imagining them. Each Black Mirror episode functions as what we might call a simulation seed, a potential reality that, once envisioned with sufficient clarity and consumed by millions, begins manifesting in the real world. The show doesn't predict the future, it programs it. Consider how the entire history of you preceded our obsession with recording everything, how Be Right Back anticipated AI chatbots trained on deceased users' data, how Nosedive prefigured our social media reputation economy. These weren't lucky guesses, but inevitable extrapolations of simulation logic. Once we accept that reality can be recorded, replayed and rated, these futures become not just possible, but probable. Black Mirror simply fast-forwards the logic to its conclusion. Cinema began as what Baudrillard called first-order simulation, reflecting reality. Films showed us the world. Then came second-order simulation, films that masked reality, presenting idealized or distorted versions. Think Hollywood's version of war, love, or heroism. Third-order simulation arrived when films referred mainly to other films, when quotation and pastiche replaced observation. Marvel movies don't reflect reality or even mask it, they exist in pure reference to their own fictional universe. The evolution can be traced precisely. Early cinema, despite its artifice, maintained an indexical relationship to reality. Real people in real places captured by real light. Even fiction films used reality as raw material. Citizen Kane might have been about a fictional character, But it reflected real power dynamics, real human emotions, real social conditions. The camera was a window, even if the view was staged. Second-order simulation emerged as Hollywood developed its codes and conventions. The Western didn't show the real West, but a mythologized version that became more real than history. Romance films created impossible expectations that shaped real relationships. War films made violence aesthetic, heroic, meaningful in ways real violence never is. These films masked reality by offering preferred versions, more dramatic, more meaningful, more satisfying than life. Third-order simulation arrived with the postmodern turn. Films like Pulp Fiction or Scream referred primarily to other films, creating meaning through quotation and subversion of genre conventions. Reality became just another text to be sampled, remixed, recontextualized. Directors weren't observing the world, but the history of cinema itself. Films became echo chambers, each one bouncing signals off others in an increasingly closed system. But we've passed into Baudrillard's fourth stage, pure simulacra. Films like The Matrix or Inception aren't about reality or illusion, they're about the impossibility of distinguishing between them. And more crucially, they train us to accept this impossibility as normal, even, desirable. We learn to prefer the simulation. This fourth stage manifests in our viewing habits. We watch reaction videos, simulations of watching simulations. We consume making of content that reveals the simulation's construction, while, oddly enough, deepening our investment in it. We engage with fictional universes through wikis, fan theories, and expanded universe content, treating these fictional worlds with the same analytical rigor we once reserved for reality. The MCU has its own historians, its own continuity scholars, its own theologians debating the metaphysics of the Infinity Stones. The progression accelerates. Virtual production using LED walls means actors perform in simulations while filming. The distinction between practical and digital effects dissolves when everything is captured in camera, but, well, nothing in camera is real. Deepfake technology means we can no longer trust that the actor we're watching is actually the actor we're watching. When Tom Cruise's digital double becomes indistinguishable from Tom Cruise, which one really is the simulacrum? Black Mirror pushes further, depicting worlds where simulation has completely replaced reality. San Junipero offers digital afterlife as salvation. USS Callister shows consciousness trapped in entertainment. Bandersnatch makes us complicit, turning viewing into a choose-your-own simulation experience. Each episode adds another layer, another level of recursive simulation, until we lose track of which level we're on. San Junipero deserves special attention as Black Mirror's most seductive simulation narrative. Unlike other episodes that warn, it entices. The digital afterlife it presents isn't dystopian but utopian. Eternal youth, infinite possibility, love conquering death. The episode makes us want simulation, crave it, see it as humanity's next evolutionary step. This is Baudrillard's final phase, made literal. Simulation not as copy of reality but as improvement on it, making reality itself seem like the inferior option. USS Callister explores simulation as power fantasy, where a bitter programmer creates his own universe where he's God. But the episode's genius lies in how it nests simulations within simulations. We're watching a television show about characters trapped in a television show within a game within a quantum computer. Each layer comments on the others, creating a vertigo of reference that leaves us unsure which level to identify with. Are we the trapped crew, the tyrannical creator, the audience complicit in consuming suffering as entertainment? Bandersnatch took the logical next step, making the audience active participants in the simulation. By choosing the protagonist's actions, we become, well, co-creators of the reality we're watching. The episode, in a sense, trains us to accept our role as simulation controllers while revealing how our choices are themselves constrained by the options presented. Free will becomes multiple choice, and agency is reduced to binary decisions predetermined by unseen programmers. Baudrillard warned that in the age of simulation, events would be produced for their media effect rather than their reality. And honestly, we're there. Politicians govern through tweets, creating policy as performance. Influencers stage lives for Instagram, their so-called reality existing only as content. Wars are planned for their CNN coverage. The simulation hasn't replaced reality. It's revealed that what we called reality was always already simulation. The examples multiply daily. Presidential debates are staged for viral moments, not policy discussion. Protests are organized for their photogenic potential. Even terrorism has become cinematographic, with ISIS producing Hollywood-quality execution videos. Understanding that spectacular images spread faster than ideologies. The event exists for its documentation. The documentation exists for its dissemination, and the dissemination exists for its effect on other simulations. Social media perfected this logic. Every posted photo is a simulation of a life that exists primarily to be photographed. The staged casualness of influencer content, the carefully messy apartments, the precisely imperfect selfies, create simulations of authenticity more convincing than actual authenticity. We perform ourselves, then forget we're performing, then lose track of who we were before the performance began. Cinema prepared us for this. Decades of increasingly sophisticated special effects trained us to accept the impossible as real. CGI doesn't just create fake worlds, it makes us comfortable with fakeness itself. When everything can be digitally altered, nothing needs to be real. Deepfakes are just the logical conclusion of a process cinema started. The history of special effects is a history of reality's death by 1,000 cuts. Each innovation, sound, color, widescreen, CGI, motion capture, virtual production, promised greater realism but delivered greater simulation. We applaud when effects are seamless, when we can't tell what's real, celebrating our own deception. The goal shifted from representing reality to replacing it with something better than real. Consider, for a moment, how superhero films have evolved over the years. Early Superman, for example, relied on pretty obvious wires and rear projection. Audiences, well, they knew it was fake, but still enjoyed the illusion. These days, modern superhero films use effects so sophisticated that they actually create entirely new visual realities. We don't really compare Thor's lightning to real lightning anymore. Real lightning now just seems insufficiently dramatic. The simulation, oddly enough, has become the standard against which reality is judged and all too often found wanting. But here's where Baudrillard, meets our earlier discussions of co-creative reality. If everything is simulation, then simulation itself becomes our reality creation tool. Black Mirror doesn't just warn us, it actually manifests. By imagining dystopian futures with such compelling specificity, it sort of provides templates for their implementation. The show becomes, in a sense, a catalogue of coming attractions, with each episode offering a potential timeline we might collectively choose. This brings us back to the hypersigil concept from Morrison. Artworks that, through their creation and consumption, actually change reality. In Baudrillard's framework, every simulation is a potential reality just waiting to be activated. Black Mirror episodes serve as reality templates, each one a fully realized world that could be implemented if enough of us buy in collectively. The show's real genius lies in making these futures feel inevitable and, well, in doing so, making them all the more likely. So the feedback loop accelerates. Tech companies, well, they watch Black Mirror for ideas implementing the less obviously dystopian elements. Dating apps, for example, gamify romance much like Hang the DJ. VR porn, it's evolving towards striking vipers. Brain-computer interfaces are now pursuing the vision of the entire history of you. The show that was meant to warn has, oddly enough, become a development roadmap. Simulation becoming specification, becoming reality, and then, well, becoming simulation again. The pandemic, you see, accelerated our passage into full simulation. Zoom replaced presence, screens mediated just about every interaction, and the digital became primary while the physical faded into the background. We learned, perhaps reluctantly at first, to prefer the controlled environment of the simulation over messy reality. Striking Vipers predicted it perfectly. Why have real relationships when simulated ones offer more control, more intensity, and frankly, more safety? The pandemic didn't really create this shift, but rather it revealed it. Forced into purely digital existence, many of us discovered, almost by accident, that we preferred it. Working from home meant curating your background, controlling your appearance, and muting yourself whenever you wished. Social life became scheduled Zoom calls, each with a clear beginning and end. Dating too moved online, where profiles could be optimized and interactions, well, scripted. We discovered, in a way, that simulation solved many of reality's inconveniences. Even our resistance took simulated forms. Virtual protests, hashtag activism, online organizing. Yeah, we fought the conditions of simulation through more simulation. The most effective political movements became those that understood how to manipulate the simulation layer, to create viral moments, to game the algorithms. Reality-based organizing seemed, well, almost quaint compared to the speed and scale of simulated activism. Contemporary cinema has, given up pretending there's a reality to reflect. Films are franchises, expanded universes, intellectual properties, simulations referring to simulations in honestly infinite recursion. When Martin Scorsese said Marvel movies weren't cinema, he was identifying this shift. They're not failed films, they're successful simulations, and simulation has, well, different goals than art. Traditional cinema, even at its most artificial, maintained some relationship to human experience. A Scorsese film, however stylized, emerged from observation of real human behavior, real social conditions. Marvel films emerged from other Marvel films, from comic books that emerged from other comic books, from myths that were already simulations of human psychology. The distance from any original reality becomes so vast that it's frankly meaningless to traverse. This isn't judgment, but description. Marvel films succeed precisely because they offer pure simulation, uncorrupted by reality's messiness. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, problems have solutions, heroes have arcs, sacrifices have meaning. The simulation offers what reality cannot: coherence, purpose, satisfaction. Each film is a perfectly crafted dopamine delivery system, engineered for maximum engagement. Why would audiences choose the ambiguity and frustration of reality-based cinema? Baudrillard believed we'd lost the ability to distinguish map from territory. But what if that's not loss but evolution? What if accepting simulation as primary is the next stage of human consciousness? Black Mirror episodes like San Junipero hint at this. Simulation not as trap but transcendence, offering immortality, infinite possibility, escape from material limits. This perspective shift reframes everything. If consciousness is primary and material reality secondary, as mystics have always claimed, then simulation technology might be consciousness discovering its own nature. VR isn't escaping reality, but revealing that what we called reality was always virtual. AI isn't creating artificial consciousness, but showing consciousness it was always artificial. The simulacrum isn't copy, but original, the first honest form. Silicon Valley's obsession with simulation, from virtual reality to brain uploading to metaverse building, might in fact represent an intuitive understanding of this truth. The tech titans aren't escaping reality but racing toward it, building the infrastructure for consciousness to, fully recognize and inhabit its true nature. Their products fail when they try to simulate material reality, but interestingly, they succeed when they embrace pure simulation. Fortnite works because it doesn't pretend to be anything but simulation. Meta struggles because it tries to simulate real social interaction instead of, inventing new forms. The danger isn't simulation itself, but rather unconscious simulation. When we forget we're in layers of constructed reality, we lose agency, but conscious navigation of simulation, understanding it as reality creation technology, offers honestly unprecedented power. We can build new worlds, new selves, new possibilities. This is where Black Mirror's warnings remain valuable. Episodes like 15 Million Merits or Smithereens show characters trapped in simulations they don't recognize as simulations. Their suffering comes not from the simulation itself, but from mistaking it for fixed reality. They rage against systems they could reprogram if they understood their nature. The show's darkest episodes are those where characters accept simulated constraints as natural law. Conscious simulation requires what we might call ontological flexibility, the ability to move between different reality frames without losing coherence. This is the skill that Black Mirror's playtest explores, showing a character who, loses himself in these nested realities. But it also appears in a more positive light in San Junipero, where characters consciously choose their reality and actually thrive within it. The difference really is awareness, intention, and acceptance of simulation as simulation. The real Black Mirror moment isn't about any specific technology, it's the realization that we're already several layers deep, that what we call reality is in fact constructed through screens, and honestly that we kind of prefer it this way. The question isn't how to return to some authentic real. That's just nostalgia for something that never actually existed. The real question is how to consciously inhabit and create within these simulation layers. This realization, really hit us collectively during the pandemic, when we discovered that most of our so-called essential activities could actually be simulated. Education, work, socializing, entertainment, even religious services, all moved online without any fundamental loss and sometimes with actual gain. The physical world began to seem like an inconvenient legacy system, necessary for biological functions, sure, but increasingly irrelevant for consciousness. We discovered we were already cyborgs, already uploaded, already living in the simulation. The only question left was whether we were ready to admit it. The future Black Mirror hints at isn't coming. It's here, unevenly distributed. Some folks live in almost pure simulation, their entire existence mediated by screens, algorithms, and digital personas. Others, well, they maintain more connection to physical reality, but increasingly on simulation's terms. Photographing meals instead of tasting them, experiencing concerts through phone screens, traveling to places known from Instagram. The gradient from physical to simulated is smooth, and honestly, we're all somewhere on it, sliding further into simulation with each update, each upgrade, each new platform. Baudrillard ended in despair, seeing only the death of meaning. But, meaning doesn't die in simulation. It multiplies, becomes mutable, open to conscious creation. If everything is simulation, then really everything is possible. His despair was generational. The response of someone who remembered when signs referred to things, when maps described territories, when images captured realities. For those of us born into simulation, who learned to read before we learned to walk, who had online identities before stable selves, the loss of fixed meaning isn't tragedy, but opportunity. We're native speakers of simulation, fluent in its grammar, comfortable with its paradoxes. The real insight of Black Mirror isn't its dystopian warnings, but, its recognition that we're already adapting, already evolving, already becoming something new. Each episode shows humans changing to survive simulation, developing new capacities, new forms of connection, new ways of being. The show pretends to be horrified by these changes, but its real message is that transformation is inevitable, already underway and, well, possibly desirable. Welcome to the desert of the real. Turns out it's actually more interesting than reality ever was. The desert metaphor, borrowed from Morpheus who borrowed it from Baudrillard, perfectly captures our situation. Deserts seem empty but teem with adapted life. They appear barren but offer profound beauty. They look inhospitable but have sheltered mystics and visionaries for millennia. The desert of the real, our simulated landscape, might seem like desolation to those expecting old-growth forest. But for those who learn its ways, who understand its logic, who embrace its possibilities, it offers freedoms previous reality couldn't imagine. We stand at a threshold. We can mourn the real's death, clinging to increasingly unconvincing simulations of authenticity. Or we can embrace our role as conscious creators in the simulation layers, using our understanding to build realities worth inhabiting. Black Mirror shows us the dangers, but between its dark visions lie glimpses of transcendence. Love persisting across death in San Junipero, consciousness expanding beyond biology in USS Callister, time and space becoming malleable in Bandersnatch. The choice isn't between simulation and reality. That binary collapsed long ago. The choice is between conscious and unconscious participation in the simulation layers we inhabit. Baudrillard gave us the diagnosis. Black Mirror gives us the symptoms. But the cure, if we need one, lies in embracing our nature as simulation-dwelling, reality-creating, meaning-making beings who are always already more than real. The screen reflects us perfectly luminous, mutable, capable of displaying infinite realities. We're not trapped in the Black Mirror. We are the Black Mirror. And reflection, as any magician knows, is the first step toward transformation.